Okay, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your warm, very warm encouragement. Okay, I lost my voice on Thursday. Thanks to the teaching ministry who prayed fervently for my voice to come back. It came back yesterday. Yay! Okay, today you can hear me, right? Okay. Today I will touch on the book of Judges. Okay. Before that, Happy Mother's Day to all mothers, me inclusive, but of course, and the fathers who usually are not what do you call that? The fathers are usually overlooked, but I also want to thank them for supporting all their mothers as well. Yes. Okay. That's right. Okay. So thanks for allowing me to share. And then before we celebrate later on, I must say that last week I was inspired by Chi Wan's lesson about the deceiver deceived and about how Judah actually found redemption. And most importantly, how he uses AI, right, to create images. I saw his image of how Isaac and his 12 sons are like, wow, very nice. Oh, look quite similar, okay. So, yeah, same genes. So I tried my hand this week using AI. I use what do you call that? Gen X, correct. Gemini, sorry, to create some images later on. So I hope it went okay lah. Okay, before we start, let us set the stage for the book of Judges. Okay, so bear with me. Some of you don't like maps. This will be the only one map. Then there won't be any more maps. Okay, okay. So the book of Joshua ends off with the Central Hill country, where the Israelites currently occupy. As what you could see here, it's the lighter, like the little shade with an outline. Okay, and the territory that God promised, which is all the different colors. So in Judges chapter 1, after the death of Joshua, so Joshua died at 110 years old, and that's where the era ends. The era has finished, a new phase begins. The Israelites asked the Lord, who should lead the fight against the Canaanites? So the Lord chose Judah, okay, promising victory. So the tribe of Judah, joined by Simeon, launched attacks, defeating the Canaanites and the Perizzites at Bezek. Okay, hold on now. Is this the one? Correct. The southern area. All right. So Judah went on to capture Jerusalem. Next to it here, at the point of time, Jerusalem was not with them. They captured it, and several other cities, though they struggled to actually drive out the inhabitants with iron chariots. So other tribes, other than Judah, had mixed results. We have Benjamin, who took battle by strategy. So Benjamin took battle, but the Benjamites could not drive out the Jebusites. So the Jebusites lived with the Benjamites all the way throughout the whole book of Judges. The northern tribes failed to fully conquer the regions. Therefore, they subjugated the Canaanites to forced labor or to coexist with them. So why is this important? Because this set the stage that this incomplete conquest, okay, set the stage for an ongoing conflict and later on moral decline among the Israelites, as they did not fully God's command to drive out the Canaanites. As you could see here, God says, "Yet you have disobeyed me. Why have you done this? They have become traps for you, and their gods will become snares to you." So this brings us to the book of Judges with my first point, the consequence of compromise. Okay? The consequence of compromise. Okay, so Judges, the whole book of Judges is actually a case where you actually have 12 judges. Okay, it depicts 12 different judges, okay, and it actually have a summary of what you see in Judges chapter 2, how the entire cycle begins. So we look at the cycle of spirituality in Judges. Okay, we start with number 1. The people served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had seen all the great things God has done for Israel. So you could see here, okay, in Judges 2, we witness that those who experienced the conquest with Joshua served the Lord. It is like us, right? Those of us who experienced radical transformation of the gospel in our lives, we showed up for everything. Those who witnessed firsthand God's mighty acts, delivering us from addiction or even that of depression, we remembered. Where God himself miraculously makes up for the lost years that we had. where the locusts have eaten away, God made it out. We remembered. So these are the people who are obedient. Those who stayed throughout the time of Joshua and the elders who outlived him. Conversely, those who did not witness how God transformed their lives, who did not risk anything for the kingdom, who were not strong enough to hold on to the next generation. Then we see after that, here, after that, the whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors. Another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. What did they do? They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors who had brought them out of Egypt. So this is what happened. So this is next one here. They were disobedient to the covenant. So God sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. It's interesting here. God bought them from slavery, and at this time around, God sold them to oppression. Okay? So now, so this whole new generation who grew up not knowing God and what God has done, decide to forsake God. In short, those whose faith are not their own are not able to retain their identity as God's covenant people. And this is where Israel is at this passage here. They forsook Yahweh and worshiped Baal and Ashtaroth, the god of the Canaanites. So God sold them to the enemies. In their distress, they called out to the Lord. They called out to the Lord, they called for repentance, okay, and they were in great distress. And the next slide goes. Not just that. Then the Lord, as usual, God saved them, raised judges who saved them out of the hands of these raiders. So this is over here. And whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was with the judge and saved them out of the hands of the enemies as long as the judge lived. For the Lord relented because of their groaning under those who oppressed and afflicted them. So there was military victory. However, when the judge died, the people returned to their ways even more corrupt than those of their ancestors, following other gods and worshipping them. So what we see here is a cycle, okay, that after that God raised judges who saved them, but then in verse 19, when the judge died, the people not just returned to their old ways, they become more corrupt than their ancestors. This cycle is not just repetitive throughout the book of Judges 12 times, it is also sickening destructive. You could see it actually spirals down, okay? From Othniel being an exemplary leader, Ehud, Shamgar, Deborah being triumphant, Gideon and Abimelech being okay, Jephthah and Samson are just tragic. So this is a spiritual or a spiraling or spiritually down for the judges in the book of Judges. So we will end off with the very last chapter. We'll start off at the end of Judges, where we witnessed a story, a horrifying story, okay, in Judges chapter 19. Then we will see what happened, okay? It is about the Levite and his concubine. Those of you who have read it, okay, I know when I was in teens ministry, young teens asked me, why happened? Why like that? Okay, so we will go through the story. Okay, we move on. A Levite and his concubine. So now a Levite and his concubine lived in the remote area in the hill country of Ephraim, took a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. But she was unfaithful to him. She left him and went back to her parents' home in Bethlehem, Judah. So you have here, okay, he's from the hill country of Ephraim. He took a concubine, okay, from Bethlehem. Now, a concubine means a second wife, a woman without the inheritance rights of a wife, of the first wife. Based on the Bible verses, the concubine was unfaithful and left him to return to her father's house in Bethlehem, in which he stayed for 4 months. So 4 months later, okay, the Levite decided to go back to persuade her to return. So this is what the AI generated, okay? I tried, okay, yes, all right. And 4 months later, he went to Bethlehem to persuade him to return. And of course, the father-in-law was very welcoming, welcomed him, urging him to stay for several days. He stayed for 3 days and 3 nights. On the 4th day, he wanted to leave. The father-in-law said, no, come, let's eat. After eating, half the day is gone. He asked him to stay behind again. Then the same thing happens on the 5th day. Okay, he wanted to leave again on the 5th day. The father-in-law said, eat. After eating, it's already quite dark. But yet, this time round, he refuses to stay. So the two of them actually left, set out for home. But it was actually late. They left late, and the day is ending. So then they decided to arrive. Then as they travel, they arrive at the Jebusite city. Let us read in verse 11. Okay? When they were near Jebus, and the day was almost gone, the servant said to his master, come, let's stop at this city of the Jebusites and spend the night. His master replied, no, we won't go to any city whose people are not Israelites. We will go to Gibeah. So you could see here, they were in Bethlehem. They were traveling. They wanted to travel to, they passed by Jebus. Okay, this is a place where we realized that the Benjamites didn't manage to conquer. They coexist with the Jebusites. All right? So, yeah, the servant said, we're nearing here already. It's getting late. Let's stay here. But the master said, no, okay? The master moved past his wisdom and decided maybe we should travel further, more into the evening, and travel to Gibeah, the place where the Israelites stays. Okay? So that's what happened. So here is the twist. When they arrived in Israelite territory, Gibeah, no one took them in. Nobody. You would think that an Israelite in an Israelite territory would be welcome. In fact, no one took them in until a resident alien, one who is from the hill country of Ephraim, but stays in Gibeah, came in from his fields, saw them in the city square, and said to them, you cannot stay out here. It's dangerous. Let me show you some hospitality. Come and stay at my house. So he took them into his house. Okay? Here we are in Israelite territory. The travelers are not welcome. And what's worse, they are not safe. And the Israelites wouldn't help. But the foreigner shows hospitality. It's interesting. Then let's catch up in verse 22. Okay? Judges 19, verse 22. While they were enjoying themselves, some of the wicked men of the city surrounded the house. Pounding on the door, they shouted to the old man who owned the house, bring out the man who came to your house so we can have sex with him. The owner of the house went outside and said to him, no, my friends, don't be so vile. Since this man is my guest, don't do this outrageous thing. Look, here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. I'll bring them out to you now, and you can use them and do to them whatever you wish. But as for this man, don't do such an outrageous thing. So in verse 22, the foreign host takes our Levite into the house. And while they were enjoying eating and drinking, they heard a pounding at the front door. It was a gang of men from the town. What were they doing? What were they demanding? They were demanding that the foreign host send out the Levite so that they can have sex with him. The biblical text is very blunt. Okay? It's very blunt. But yet it is also very familiar. Okay? It brings us to the book of Genesis, of Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay? Genesis 19, verse 4 says, before they had gone to bed, they here refers to the two angels who appear to Lot and his family. Yeah? All the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them. Okay? When the biblical authors want to hammer away something that is evil, okay, in this situation of Judges 19, they'll compare it with Sodom and Gomorrah. So the biblical authors, this is the paradigm of evil. And I want to highlight one thing now, okay? When the foreign host says, okay, No, 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 my friends, don't be so vile. This man is my guest. Don't do this dangerous thing. Here, my virgin and my daughter and this concubine, you can have them. Please recognize that the Bible does not condone this action, okay? But it's just reporting what happened, okay? So at which point, if you have read chapter 19, is the man says, hey, don't be so stressed. You can have my concubine. So the man seizes his concubine, throws her out of the door, and the text reports that the group of men gang raped this woman all night. When they had done, this woman crawls back to the host house and she dies with her hand extended to the doorstep. When the Levite woke up the next morning, I'm surprised how he could sleep, and found his concubine dead on the doorstep. This is where it's shocking. He brought her body home, cut her body up to 12 pieces, and sent it each to the 12 tribes of Israel with a post-it note saying, guys, we are in trouble. Such a thing was never seen before or done since the Israelites left Egypt. So the point is, what is the point of this narrative at the end of Judges? It is intentional. It is to demonstrate to us, to people who read, that the covenant people not just they do not abide by the covenant, but they become so wicked and so entrenched in their own evil that they are now worse than the Canaanites. So our narrator concludes in 21 verse 25. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as they saw fit. So here we witnessed heights that the Israelites fell. From Judges chapter 1, where they had military conquest with Joshua, all the way to 19, where morality is compromised, where in this context, the Israelites are now in sin, entrenched in sin and their brevity. We move on. So my first point is, this is the consequence of compromise. Compromise is the result of us forgetting who God is and what He has done. And, this is interesting, and just because the Lord delivers us, it does not mean our underlying issue or issues are no longer there. Many times we look at God's deliverance and say, hey, I'm fine, What is interesting is the Lord was with them. Only appears in Judges chapter 1, verse 19 and verse 22, and thereafter it no longer appears. Very different from the book of Joshua. Compromise withers our spiritual life slowly but surely. And we become entrenched and so wicked that we become no different or worse than those around us. So now, are there areas in your life, in my life, in our lives, that God says you can change? You can, but you say, I can't. Or what are the thorns, the battles that you have not conquered, or the snares, the idols that stay in your life that you have not given up? So this is the consequence of compromise. Let us think about it. So this is the end of point number 1, where we witness that the most vulnerable, in this context, the women, are paying the highest price. And we know how the Israelites get there, the consequence of compromise. So the question is, how did the Israelites get out, right? That brings me to my second point, answering the call, breaking free from the cycle, So we continue on. Just now I read in Judges chapter 2 about a cycle. I'll repeat it in Judges chapter 3 again, another cycle. The Israelites, again, did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served Baals and the Ashereth. So they forgot, they were disobedient. The anger of the Lord burned against Israel. So He sold them into the hands of Cushan Rishathaim, king of Aram. So He sold them to the foreign oppressor. But when they cried to the Lord, He raised up for them a deliverer. Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, who saved them. Okay. Then the Spirit of the Lord came to him, so that became Israel judged and went to war. So God raised Othniel. Then the Lord gave Cushan Rishathaim, king of Aram, into the hands of Othniel, who overpowered him. So you can see the cycle repeats in Judges chapter 3. And God raises Othniel, the very first judge, Caleb's nephew. Okay? So this is what happens. And how did God save the Israelites? Through raising a new judge. I'm going to show you a next cycle. Okay, it's a new cycle, but it's a different cycle. I call this the life cycle of a church. Okay? Now, rather than looking at the cycle of judges, now we're looking at the life cycle of the church. Dr. Gard Rosell, okay, one of the seminary preachers who teaches church history, highlights that the entire history of the church, okay, Christian church from Reformation all the way to today, finds themselves this basic cycle, repeating itself. It starts with revival, where the church launches a passionate response to the gospel. Okay? The response grew so large, all right, that the church has to organize itself to manage this response. The hierarchies are formed, okay? Things are going well. The church is thriving, okay? And of course, you call this the mature stage. Then, here comes the bureaucratization stage, okay? Where the church now facilitates its, okay? Where the church that was facilitating its mission begins to facilitate its own survival, okay? When the church redefines its mission such that the primary objective now is the continuation of itself, okay, of its organization, and not the mission it was meant to be. So this is the start of decline. And finally, without leaders calling the church back to her original purpose, the mission dies. The church will continue to endure long after the mission dies, okay? But the mission dies. So somebody is asking, so depressing. So how? No point starting a church. No, that's not the point. The point is, the answer God gives is the same. God will raise among everyone around us a revivalist, like the way he raised judges. People who will call the church back to what is meant for its mission. In the book of Judges, you can see here, okay? You see how God raised Othniel, somebody whose illustrious background, of course, is Caleb's nephew. You could also see Ehud. What's Ehud known for? Not much. The fact that he has this characteristic of being a left-handed warrior. Special talent. That's all, you know? And you could also see God raised widow. A widow, or what you call that, a woman, a wife, okay, Deborah. All right? The wife of a Lapidoth, a wife of a military man. Or he could also raise somebody like a farmer, Gideon, a doubtful, okay, and of course, not forgetting, fearful farmer. So like when God sent Gideon, Gideon replied to ask him, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I'm the least in my family. So God calls people from all walks of life. Okay, so my last point here is we have witnessed the life cycle of the church in recent events. According to the book of Judges, it does not mean it won't happen again. The book of Judges illustrates that God uses different people with different talents to lead the Israelites out of their predicament. We need everyone contributing to pull the church in God's direction. And if you feel the Spirit nudging you, or God putting suggestion in your mind to do something, I encourage you to answer the call. In summary, Oops. Yeah, sorry. There's 2 points here. The consequence of compromised, and let's answer the call. And with that, I thank you so much.